Okay, so the last two videos that I did not rewatch, and now I don't remember most of what I talked about. I remember being incredibly pissed about some stuff with my parents, and having my entire, I think it was Sunday, that was hijacked by my family, to get me sucked back into their drama. And then the next day was kind of some carryover from that, but then I don't really remember beyond that what I actually talked about. So took a few days off and have been working in my room, so I feel like I've made some progress in here, and that definitely helps. I don't know. I was watching this Jerry Wise video yesterday, and he was talking about it was weird mannerisms of the scapegoated children of narcissistic parents, right? And so of course I watched it because that was me. And there were a couple of the points that really hit home and kind of made me feel like that's part of the purpose of this whole YouTube thing. The first of which was he talked about getting tongue-tied when speaking their truth. And I feel like that's been most of my whole process on navigating my journey and trying to figure anything out. There's been a lot of that, and a lot of gaslighting myself. I think that was from a different point, but it was one that carried over. It's like, yep, that's me. But then there was the other one where he said, secretly fantasize about proving them wrong, proving the parents wrong. And I was just thinking about that. It's like, I feel like that is very much kind of the motivating factor on why I started this channel, even though I didn't initially know what it was going to come around to being. When I started it, I just knew that I felt like I was supposed to start doing the YouTube thing and didn't know what exactly that was supposed to look like, so I just started talking one day, and then that just kind of became the thing, and then it was sort of navigating through my whole process and coming back around to stories over and over again to realize different aspects of them and make sense of things at deeper levels that I was trying to make sense of for myself. I was just thinking, especially the proving them wrong piece. I don't think it was specifically that as much as, I was just thinking about before I started doing the video, was when I was in high school, and I've talked about this story on here several times. I overheard my mom, she worked as a lunch lady, and so of course my entire high school career she's everywhere in the middle of everything that I'm doing, right? So she's a lunch lady, and one day I hear her and some of her lunch lady friends talking, and they were talking about a former student, I believe, that had committed suicide. And I remember her getting all big and dramatic and, oh, you just never can tell what brings somebody around to doing such a thing, and blah blah blah. And like the whole thing just like screamed fakeness to me. But of course the lunch lady friends seemed to kind of buy into it, and of course they just fed off of each other. I got this very strong sense when I was in high school that a lot of them had never moved beyond that high school mentality, maturity thing than any of the students had. I won't say that about all of them per se, but there was definitely a very strong amount of that, I think, just that they hadn't really grown up themselves either, but especially my mother, of course, that was always the one that I noticed it the most with. But when she was having this conversation with these people and she looked over at me, I remember feeling like if I did that, because, you know, suicidal ideation was something that I struggled with the majority of my life, right? From like 8 through mid-30s. And ultimately, about the time I started taking myself back and choosing me over the toxic connections, like with my ex and, you know, then with my family and all that stuff. Like it was kind of always in the back of my mind until I hit this point of where I started choosing me. And I remember my mom looking at me, and I remember thinking, if I did that, she won. Because ultimately, you know, what she would get out of that is she could forever say that she just didn't know what happened as far as her daughter went or whatever, but, you know, she would, okay, if I would have done that in high school, that would have been over 20 years ago now. She would still be living on that one, right? So she would have won because she would have forever locked in this dramatic storyline of how, you know, how poorly put upon she was or whatever. And I just remember thinking, like, that is not going to be how this turns out. I will not let that be my legacy, that she forever can live on this this thing that happened when a big part of the stuff that I was trying to heal from, even then, was stuff that I picked up because of her, right? And again, she was the reason I said in high school that I would never have children if I could not heal this in myself first, because I would not pass that on for another generation. It's like everything that she refused to even acknowledge as an issue in her life, you know, but has willingly made it my problem just because I exist. That's not going to be the legacy I leave behind. So it's like just thinking about like that aspect of the whole storyline, and, you know, choosing back then to not let her win, so to speak, by having this thing she could forever come back to about, I mean, basically what it would amount to is another way that her terrible child, that was me, hurt her, all the while denying anything she's ever done, right? So it's like, yeah, no, not interested in that. But then it's also, you know, okay, going back to that tongue-tied piece, it's like anytime I've ever tried to start speaking up, if I tried to stand up for myself or anything else, it's like that was always squashed. So it's like it makes sense that that would be something that I would struggle with trying to navigate this whole journey and make sense of things. And why I've had to retell some of the same stories over and over again, because that's basically what I've been doing this entire time, has been retelling the stories, but from a slightly different perspective as I learn different things about myself through them and through this whole healing process. It's just immense. And very frustrating. But it's like when I was listening to him talk in the video about that, it's like, it makes perfect sense, because anytime I tried to be optimistic about something, you know, that was especially squashed, right? We weren't going to have that. Me doing anything worthwhile, no. I wasn't meant to have a life. Remember, I was supposed to, I exist because I was supposed to forever allow my family to suck the life out of me so they could last longer. Even though they're not really contributing anything productive to anything. I was having a conversation with my brother a little bit ago, and I was aggravated because my mom calls me up to inform me that she forgot that the guy was coming to repair the washing machine today. So, because that was happening, and you know, she called me up and said, oh, well, he just told me that he'd be there in like 20 minutes, so can you make a path? You know, she's got shit in the washer, she got shit in the dryer, she's got shit all over the floor, not literal shit, but like blankets and clothes and stuff, and can I make a path? It's like, here we go again. And of course, she's conveniently out to lunch with my dad and his sister and her husband and the brother that, you know, just came back up from Florida again. The Jim that has a girlfriend up here while his girlfriend down there is not doing very good. The old lady that he apparently didn't realize was going to get old one day, even though they've been together for like, I don't know, like 20 years or better. And she's always been substantially older than him, but now it's a problem. But he's got a girlfriend up here that I think he went to school with or something, and who conveniently just lost her husband. So, you know, there's like all these like layers of shadiness that I'm seeing even within my family. And it's like, that's gross. That's gross. Don't like that. Not a fan of that. And don't want to be around it. However, I think, I don't know. Maybe I'll come up with some way to get out of the baby shower for tomorrow. So my cousin, I don't have any problems with this cousin. Okay, she had twins back in July, and one of them died last month because they were super premature and all this stuff. And I was skating the day before the funeral, and I just got like this kind of message that came to me that was, one soul, two vessels. This had to happen to fulfill the fear of the mother line, but you know, the other one was going to be okay, right? But yet it's I got this like sort of message that came through, and it's like, what am I supposed to do with that? Am I supposed to say this to her? Because that sounds kind of weird. And I didn't. But then I was also, I think a big part of it is more just me learning to trust the messages that do come through. So I mean, would she have benefited any way through me relaying this information that just kind of came to me? I don't know. But then I didn't, because of course I don't feel super close with any of the family anyway, period. Like, that's across the board. My family, there's people, you know, my brother, my one cousin, and my one aunt. But like, that's about it. And even then, it's like, if there's, I don't know, just, anyway, I think the point of the messages coming through is to help me learn to trust myself and to say things as they come to mind. Like the other day, okay, at the concert, there was this girl there, she's probably in her 20s, and she had like these, I don't know, booty shorts on, and like super short, and this like see-through star kind of, I don't even know what you would call it. Not not a jacket. Not a, I don't know. It was like a mesh something or other, like a cover up kind of a thing that didn't really cover a whole lot, right? But she was going up the stairs in front of me, kind of off to the side, because we were over, we'd just gotten in the gates. The gates had just opened up, so there's a bunch of people standing in line for like merch. I had just gotten through the merch line and had a shirt and was going to go find the bathroom and then find a spot to sit and park for the entire concert. And at the bottom of the stairs, I heard this woman and her boyfriend making fun of that girl for what she was wearing, because they deemed her to be on the bigger side, and so they thought it was acceptable to just make fun of her, right? I heard her comment, and as I get a few steps up, I hear her turn to her friend and say something about they were laughing at me or something. And there was a part of me that kind of wanted to say something, but then also I didn't really know what to say in the moment, so I just kind of took in what was going on. In hindsight, I probably would have said something about, miserable people. It takes a miserable person to try to bring somebody else down. Period, right? Something along that line, just for the sake of don't listen to whatever that bullshit is. Do your own thing, because she's already in her own miserable existence, and you can't fix that if somebody chooses to be miserable and chooses to try to pull other people into it, right? It's like they're just trying to hurt other people because they also hurt at some level. But, like in my family's case, they never admit to it. But like in the moment, it's like I felt like I kind of wanted to say something to her, but I did, like I couldn't form the words. Like this tongue-tied piece, right? It's like I never really know what to say or what I can say. I think it's more. Will you stop? I think it's more that I don't like inserting myself because. I've always been, demonized for anytime I had an opinion that the family didn't agree with for whatever reason. Like, I remember my mom getting mad at me when I was in high school. I think my brother's senior year, so I was a freshman. He had a crush on some girl, and I said something to him, and it would you stop? This dude likes to be held. Something along the lines of if you never say anything, you'll never know, kind of a thing. But he took it one way. And that wasn't quite what I said, but it was something along that line. And I think it sounded, or it had the potential to sound a little heavy-handed on the one end of it, but it was, if this, then this kind of a thing. If you never, take a chance, you're never going to find anything out, that kind of a thing. But anyway, he got pissed at me, and he wouldn't talk to me for a while, and my mom had heard it, and she automatically assumed that I meant the worst, and it's like, that's not what I was saying, but when I explained it to her, actually I think I was still in school. Anyway, sorry, dogs barked. Nobody's here. So, they were just barking for the hell of it. Come on. Little booty. But it's like every time I tried to say something and offer a different perspective, it's like it was always assumed that the worst, right? Whatever the worst in that situation could be, that was what was assumed that I meant. It's like, why? Why is this the only option, right? And so it's like, it makes perfect sense that, it's so hard to find my words and speak my way through things and to make sense of the things when, like, those are the things that I can go back to, right? So it's like, anytime I've had something to offer, it was just automatically assumed that I intended the worst somehow. And I think the biggest part of that is because if it was my family, it would be because they intended the worst, right? So that's what they were projecting onto me because, that's what they were always doing. So, watched it was a Lotus Tile Tarot reading a couple days ago, and she was talking about what do people project onto you. And basically, the thing that she kept coming around to was that the sense that I'm just naive and don't know things, so therefore I need to do things their way, and because that's what they would have done, and I wasn't capable of making actual decisions for myself, so it was imposed on me as to what they thought I should do or whatever. And it's like, that's like my family right there. Like the whole everything. Like my whole undergrad experience, the only reason I went to undergrad when I did was because I didn't have a choice, because it was my mother's regret that she had gotten married before she graduated high school. I mean, that wasn't the part she regretted. The part she regretted was that she never had the college experience. And I remember I went to college with absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. It's like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want to do with my life. I know nothing, right? I knew that I had to go to college because it was her regret that she hadn't gone to college at all at that point. And so that got pushed onto me and my brother. But we didn't know what we wanted to do. And again, we didn't know who we were, right? So we just went because that's what we were told we had to do. And as I've been kind of navigating through, like, most of my life's choices, it was basically getting pushed along by what she thought I should do, and based on what she wanted to do and hadn't done, right? And it's like, I've said a few times on here, if I could do it all over again, I would have taken a year or two off, probably found some kind of trade or something to go into instead to, actually work and try to figure out what I wanted to do for myself while I had the time where I was still on my parents' insurance, where that was the thing that was able to happen, and, I could have made these kind of decisions a little easier, and, rather than getting pulled into, I don't know who I am or what I want to do with my life, so I guess I'll go to psychology and because I know I'm interested in that to some degree, and maybe it'll help me figure something out for myself. Maybe it'll help me figure out who I am or what my deal is. So it's like everything I've done was, well, these aren't options that are apparently open to me, but maybe it'll help me figure out what I'm supposed to be doing or get me closer to what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's like the whole path has been following the whims of other people, and I mean, like, okay, seminary, that was all me. And the biggest thing there was, okay, I got I got a degree. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. What the fuck are you gonna do with that and not have further schooling, right? That was so. When I started looking at seminary, because again, my minors in undergrad were psychology and religious studies, because there were things that I was at least somewhat interested in and hoped it would help me make sense of things for myself. So then I ended up with this thousands of dollars in debt for this whole school experience, but it was not an option for me to stay at home with my family, because like my brother went to IUPUI, so he could still live at home and not have near the student loans as I had. But for me, it was like, I have got to get away from my mother, and she's making me go to school, fine, but I got to go at least far enough away to live on campus somewhere. I lived 2 years on campus and then 2 years off campus. And, there's a lot of experiences that I'm glad that I had. There are a few that, you kind of leave the bad taste in your mouth kind of a thing. It's like, it would have been okay if that hadn't happened. Right? Like the whole situation with the guy from my senior year when I was living at the Baptist house, right? The house pastor's son that showed up enough to, try to show off like he was interested in all that, yeah. Basically, the dude that never should have had my attention to any degree, and I knew he would not be able to handle the full expression of me, and yet, because because you're supposed to be nice to people, right? And because, that's like the biggest thing that was kind of pushed. It's like, yes, undergrad, but also you're going to have to get married. And, so it's like, it was never about finding somebody worthwhile or somebody that would be a good match. It was, I knew that one wasn't any of those things and didn't have the capacity to be any of those things. So when the opportunity came to kind of push him back, I did, right? And he freaked. Because that was where the conversation with the friend from my roommate from the year before came in at, where like it was just a comment of, Matt's here and we're gonna go do something or whatever, and she's like, ooh, who's Matt, your boyfriend? It's like, no, but thank you for that, right? So it was at least this opportunity to insert this paranoid thought in his head. And I've talked a lot about how I kind of am a bit of an instigator of tower moments, and I feel like that was a big part of that, right? So I've been thinking a lot about that today, because I've gotten a lot of these messages recently about, it's just an inadvertent thing that I tend to cause tower moments in people. And it's like, I was kind of thinking through that, right? So one prime example, first off, this dude, where he says the thing, or where my friend says the thing, and I just said what my friend had said. All I said was what she had said, and he had a freaking malfunction, like I was trying to push him in that direction. It's like, no. So like, for my perspective, it was step back. It was just the easy way to say, step back. You can't handle this. And you don't want any part of it anyway, so just, and he freaked. But because there had been any kind of interaction, whatever, despite the fact that I knew he could not handle my energy, and he could not handle me, I let him think that I was somehow interested in this other thing, and I wasn't. But the way he responded said a lot more for him, and, you know, all the friendships that I think he damaged for himself, because, you know, he had been around a lot of the people in the Baptist house the year before, right? And he knew most of them. But then as I'm living with them and they're getting to know me and finding out that, you know, what he's saying isn't actually the case, but he's spending less time with them, you know, and they're spending more time with me, you know, so it's like he ended up kind of shifting to other friends outside of that space, you know, because crazy girl's there, so he's not gonna come back. Thank you. So I got my distance on that end. However, since I wasted my time at all and allowed him the brief access to my energy, it allowed his more disturbingly complicated friends to, you know, find me, if you will. As I've talked about the guy that randomly, okay, so a group of us went to this club off campus because, you know, we want to go dancing, right? Have a couple drinks, go dancing, no big deal. That dude was there, or this dude's friend was there, and sleazy friend, right? So sleazy friend somehow ends up with my phone number, probably because of that guy, and starts sending me really shitty, rapey messages, basically. And while it didn't, it was one of those things that was like, it sucked, but I didn't take him like too overly seriously, and it's like, bam, blocked, now what are you gonna do, kind of a thing. I didn't think he was in any way interested enough in tracking me down and, you know, harassing me in like a more live action scenario. It was block his damn number and then he disappears, right? But still, since he was able to make the rapey comments, it was still something that kind of it did its damage, right? It still was basically a shot at my self-worth, right? So like that's something I've talked about on here a whole lot, the struggling with that worthiness wound, right? So it was still another place, where something affected that further and gave me more that I had to process through and to kind of heal through, right? Because even if, you know, there was like, it was nothing of substance, it was nobody worthwhile. Like this dude was literally just like the bottom of the barrel kind of cockroach under the fucking trash can kind of material. But it was still, since his friend had access enough to me, because, you know, because I'm supposed to be nice to people or whatever, right? And then it ended up hitting a bit harder than I guess I would have thought of it. And honestly, I hadn't thought of it for years until back in the fall, I think it was, when I was trying to process through this information. And it's like, oh, now I'm thinking of more stuff that I'd forgotten about. And fuck. Okay, great. Here's something else we got to work on, right? Or here's something that this guy said that seems to have later played out when I was, you know, married to the guy that starts making the comments about how he should have raped me when he had the chance, right? So it's like that. It's that little, basically a hook in your system, right? So something to suck the life out of you somewhere, right? So, and then in the right time, it can get activated. So somebody that has further access, like, you know, the dude I married, even though I shouldn't have married him. You know, I've made that pretty expressly clear a few times. You know, it was still something that he said a lot as a means of trying to further dig in on that worthiness wound thing. You know, and of course, when you're fucking married to a narcissist, then you're going to hear all the things about how, you know, how worthless you are, and you're lucky to have them, kind of a thing, and you know, you're really shitty in all these ways, but you know, I'm willing to put up with you. But it's like, yeah. Anyway, going back to the tower moment piece, because he came up in that this morning too, right? So there's this whole ordeal this morning. Okay, Ziva's little bed. She has her bed down here. And she's like, what? Hi, Zivi. She'll come off her bed, because of course it's an elevated one, right? So she'll come off her bed when it's time for, or when we're awake enough and I'm willing to feed her breakfast. If it's before 3, no. But it was like almost 4, so it was fine. So she gets up, and the first thing she does is she kind of shakes, right? And because I have this elevated bed down here, she moves closer to the door. And so, like, the past few days, what she's been doing is she'll shake, and, you know, her tail's, like, thwapping against the door. So it's like, it sounds like somebody's knocking. And every single time, it's like, oh, do you have to do that? Because it's, like, so loud. And so early in the morning. It hasn't been a problem until this morning, because, okay, my parents' room's right across the hall. Because for anybody that's new here, I had to move back in when I was getting a divorce from the asshole. And, you know, let myself get completely fucked over in that process just so I could be done with him, right? So I am still in this situation. It is still not ideal, but when I get out of here, I will not be back. And I think the biggest thing is when I get out of here, and, you know, after I finally figured some things out for myself, I will probably never speak to these people again. If I can make myself commit to that for my own sanity and my own mental health sake, right? But anyway, so they have this new dog, right? They rescue that, you know, runs around a lot and just like scared shitless because she doesn't know what she's able to do. She's been here long enough that she knows she sleeps in their room, but that's only if I can herd her back to the room. They will not do it. So if they can't coerce her to go into their room, then, and I haven't chased her that, like, okay, especially if I go to bed before they do, which happens sometimes, or at least before my mom, I can usually send her that way. I'm not so sure she lays down otherwise. She might just run around nervous the whole time trying to figure out what to do, but they'll leave the door open so she could theoretically go back in there. I'm actually going to spend some time with some snacks in the leash here in a little bit and try to get her to move forward toward the thing she wants rather than freaking out and running away from it. Dog door needs work. She's finally at the point where she can walk. This has taken some time. I think we've had her 4.5 weeks. There's been some times I've had to go out and herd her back into the house because she doesn't want you. You cannot catch her unless she's pinned somewhere. And so I just leave the screen door propped open and the big door open long enough to go out there and herd her back in. My parents won't do it. They'll leave the doors open so she could theoretically come in, but also so are all the bugs. And now it's, like we're getting into like fall season anyway, so there's going to be a lot more of that, I'm sure. But yeah, like that's a whole thing, right? So this morning they have their door open because she didn't go in there because I went to bed first. So Ziva starts shaking and does the thwapping of her tail on the door, and I hear them talking as I'm going down the hallway, and of course Piper's in there, but Pepper's not. It's like, okay, where's Pepper at? Because I'm going to feed mine and theirs, because I'm pretty sure theirs hadn't eaten yet at that point. But anyway, I heard my dad talking, so I went back to find Pepper, because she will put herself in there. You know, I think she's been sleeping under the bed though, so I have not been. I went in there and looked for her, and it's like, I don't know where she's at, but then she like shows up. So yeah, but my dad apparently heard Ziva's tail on the door and thought somebody was pounding on the door. And my mom's like, "Do you know anything about somebody pounding on the door?" It's like, yeah, that's Ziva's butt. And they're like, "Oh, ouch." Yeah. So anyway, that was just a random side note. I was going into a tower moment, so how the fuck did I get there again? Anyway. So I don't remember why I got to the dog story, and if that had anything to offer, but this one's gonna wag her tail because she knows some talking about dogs, right? Not yet, take a break. So okay, that's what it was. When I came back to bed, and I couldn't go to sleep, so I was just kind of wandering through my thoughts and, you know, seeing where my visions take me and all these fun things, right? And I feel like what's the word? I think it's a liminal space, kind of an in-between space, right? It's like I feel this in-between space. It's like in the space that I'm in presently, it's like I don't fit here anymore. But I'm not quite to the space that I will be at. I really need you to stop. It is not time. No. But I'm not quite where I'm going to be, right? Yeah. Ouch. That was a lot more gidge than I needed right then. Okay, but no, we're not doing that. Anyway. So, it's this weird sort of feeling being in between timelines, and like I feel like I'm lining up more with the timeline that I'm meant for, and, you know, kind of holding the highest hope. I don't know. I'm holding out for like the best case scenario for me, right? So the ideal end goal, and just kind of, you know, seeing where these kind of perspectives, the things that come up in this time. Anyway, I've talked a few times about how I see this, you know, the twin flame connection. It's a big one, right? So I feel like I have I've mostly unified my own masculine and feminine aspects within myself. There's still some work to be done. But anyway, so like I'll just have like these random visions that kind of they come into my mind and kind of play out. That just seems like it's really dark. Anyway, sorry, easily distracted. So, you know, I've talked before about how I could see like adopting kids, you know, having a couple, adopting a couple. And, you know, that was something that came in a few weeks ago. But it's like, I feel like that's definitely meant to be a part of my path. Anyway, so I shift to these kind of timelines like a lot, and I feel like it's like the physical timeline that I'm on does not line up with these other timelines, but I feel like I'm more on the other timelines than I am in the one that I'm currently existing in. So it's like a really weird kind of, I don't know. Anyway, so this morning, I'm just kind of seeing where my thoughts wander and what visions come in and all this stuff. And the one that comes up is one that I've talked about seeing before. And when I was meeting up with the chaplain that I worked with in the Guard briefly, we had a conversation one day where he was talking about his former stepkids and how they'd come back around later in life to check in with him because he'd had an important role in their lives, right? And he, when I was talking to him about my former stepson, he said he would be surprised if that wasn't the case. So, and not because of anything that or anything of that conversation with that guy by any means, because I haven't even talked to him since at least March, I think. But anyway, so I have this kind of vision come to mind where I'm seeing this kid show up all these years later. Of course, it's not going to be before he's 18, because, yeah, no way in hell. But, so he finds me in the space of being with the twin flame, right? And having this other existence and actually having a decent, peaceful life. Finally. But, so I'm talking to the kid, and that idea of the tower moment came in because the biggest piece was in my connection with his family, right? The storyline that I entered that group and was his mother and father hated each other and were weaponizing him against each other, right? Weaponizing the kid against the other parent, right? So like they were never married, and she found out she was pregnant after she cheated on my ex. So initially, he didn't even believe the kid was his, but then, she pushed to file paternity before, I think he always said it was the last possible time she could have done it and gotten anything out of him. So he kind of fought it for a little bit, but then it ended up working out where the kid ended up being his anyway. And, so of course he gets to start paying child support and all these things for this kid that he, that some other guy claimed for the first 2 years of his life. Whatever, right? All that kind of drama. So the parents were weaponizing the kid against the other parent as much as they could. And I talked about when I first, when I first started seeing his dad, that I never should have, but, with this whole twin flame scenario, I have realized that, it was never about my ex. That was a painful lesson that I had to learn because, one of the things that I remember wanting to know in life is what gets somebody to the point where they end up in these really toxic connections and then don't feel like there's a way out, or don't feel like it's possible to, find... I got a thing on my wall that says it's never too late to live happily ever after. That they feel like that's just not for them because they're in this toxic connection that they feel stuck in, right? So the only way you get that understanding is to go through that experience, right? And the only reason I ended up with that guy in that kind of toxic situation was because of all these ways that I'd been basically made to diminish myself, for the sake of being nice to people, or for the sake of being worthwhile, of having relationships with people. Okay, so there's the neighbor drove by with a trailer, and then there was a delivery. So we're back. Anyway, the only way you get into relationships that kind of toxic are because you have chronically chipped away at your sense of, worth, your value, your self-respect. You chip away at all those things, or have assistance in getting there. Like my family has been a huge component in making me feel like, I wasn't worthy of like a good connection, right? Because what my whole existence was basically beating me down and telling me how I was too much for everybody, and I had to diminish myself to make other people comfortable. So it's like, that's how I got in that situation. Never should have happened, but because I was trying to figure some things out, I had to go through the experience, right? And then rebuilding afterwards is fucking hard, but it's what it is. Anyway, so when the twin flame thing came up, there was this, like, okay, I've talked about, it was I committed my love and my career lives over to the universe to take the lead on. And then shortly after, I came across the music video that he had done, where it was like just him singing one of his songs. And like, I just started, it's like, I was just like completely enthralled, consumed. I don't know. It's just like, I couldn't stop playing this song over and over again, right? And it was just like, I feel this song all the way through my entire body. It's like, it felt like somebody else out there got it, right? Like the pain that I was carrying my whole life, even though I didn't know at that point what it fully was. But in that time where I'm just listening to the song over and over again, I have that kind of, that intuitive voice chimes in saying, that's him, that's the one you've been looking for all your life. And again, as I've told this story many times, my initial reaction was, yeah, right, he's out of my league. And the response back was, are you going to let us do this, or do you want to do it your way again? Because that's worked so well for you in the past. It's like, what do I got to lose, right? So, after that whole scenario came up with the intuitive voice conversation and, the kind of back and forth, and then leaning into it a little bit more, once I started making these other connections, then I had this like big mourning phase where it's like, I've wasted so much time because I didn't fully trust myself on, I've always had this sense that, there's my exact match out there somewhere, right? And that, this ideal love story could exist. But because I also, because I went along with the voices that were telling me that I was too much, or that I was too sensitive, and, that everything about me was a problem, right? It's like, I just, it was like chipping away at my self-worth all throughout my life, right? So, sitting on the edge of the bed, can't get in the right spot, I don't know. Anyway, when I was processing through how much time I wasted, like with the whole ex, and the biggest thing was, it was like this actual mourning period of how much time I had wasted, but then also the knowing that it wasn't truly wasted because I wasn't there for my ex. I was there to help his brother and to help his son, and to show them that just because my ex was a dick doesn't mean that they have to be forever bound to suffering for the shit that he drugged them into just by, being an adjacent connection, if you will. Like his brother. His son absolutely adored his uncle. And when, because the son's mother was trying to use the kid as a weapon, she forced the son to say some things about the uncle and the father that weren't true. And, you know, she tried to, this is where she, she faced her tower moment in me, because she had this completely bogus protective order that she put together. And then it's like, I destroyed everything she had put on there. And I could even link it back to the tiny little hint of truth that had happened versus, you know, all the lies that she steeped in there otherwise. And like, I had cameras or like pictures from, you know, with dates on them for when, you know, all the information about the picture, you know, so like, okay. One of the things that she assumed was she had the little piece of truth that my ex's grandmother had died, right? Public information, 5555. So public information, she comes up with this information that that my ex's grandma had died, right? And so knew the information as far as the where, the whens, and all this crap. And when we were coming up from Alabama to pick up the kid on his spring break, and he was going to be with us down there for a couple weeks, and his grandma died the day that we were coming up. In fact, we had just left the house to make the trip up to Indiana, and his mom called and said she died. And so we were talking on the road about, should we go get funeral clothes? Or should we just go, you know, carry on with the original plan? And I was like, you know what? I said, your brother lost his grandmother. He deserves to be able to go and have the time to mourn and not worry about your son making up lies about him because, you know, your son's mother is pushing him in that direction. Right? So I said, so we're not going to go. I said, we're going to go get the kid, we'll check in with the family, and then we'll leave and not be around for the funeral, right? Because it's like the fact that we had him at all for his spring break was enough to let us know that she was trying to do something, right? Try to block that from being a future possibility anyways. It's like we knew that there was something was, you know, trying to be worked through, right? Like she had something sketchy in mind. So, you know, we decided right after we left, it's like, no, we're not going to go. We're going to go pick up the kid. We'll see everybody. And then we'll bring him back and, you know, we'll be in Alabama by the time that all that stuff's going on. So your brother doesn't have to worry about it. So there's no, you know, no question that he did not do anything. And, you know, so of course she used on the protective order about all these things that, you know, she wanted to be true, I guess. And there's a part of me that wants to say, who in their right fucking mind would wish that on their children? But then I think back to like all the shit that I've had to go through because of my family and because of their refusal to deal with their shit. So it's like, yeah, I see her as wanting that to be true for her child so she could keep her child away from his father moving forward. You know, it doesn't matter that any of it was made up, right? It just, she was trying to do that. She wanted it to be true that her son had somehow come into harm so she could have him separated from his father for good, right? So, hello tower moment, because I completely destroyed her argument, right? Everything on that protective order, yeah, I spent months combing through the stuff that his ex before me had put together, you know, dealing with the time when my former stepson was, you know, a baby, because she got that time frame, or like it was, I think they started connecting with him before he turned 2, maybe, I don't know. Before then, some other guy claimed him, and that was it, right? Until she needed child support, and the other guy wasn't it. You know, because he also got arrested because, you know, they did something together, and she just turned him in so he could get in trouble, and she get away from it, or get away with it. Yeah. But anyway, everything on that protective order. And the biggest thing was the sheriff showed up one day while I was home and, you know, said he had this thing for my ex, well, now ex. But, you know, he couldn't leave it for him. He had to give it straight to him. So, all right. So, you know, there was a couple weeks where it was kind of tricky trying to get it. And then eventually I was like, you need to call him up so we can get this over with and go ahead and handle whatever the fuck is on that. And, you know, so there again, that's when I shifted into, you know, full detective mode and piecing together everything that, you know, all the shit in her stories, you know, you could get the little glimmer where there was a tiny piece of the truth, but then how badly she spun it from there. And, you know, I spent months going through this stuff, and every single day he would come home from work and be like, what'd you do today? Nothing. It's like, you know, but I'm the only reason he got custody of that kid in the end story. But, you know, like, and honestly, him being a piece of trash human, you know, I wouldn't have done it for him. But since his brother and his kid were the ones that were, you know, were also directly being harmed by everything, it's like, I was there for them. And, you know, like his brother, when I first met him, it was a while before he would talk to me. Like, he wouldn't even look at me. It was just so obvious that he was trying not to exist, trying to go unnoticed so he didn't bring any unnecessary attention to himself, right? And, you know, like, I finally made him talk to me one day because he was going through there, and I just started talking to him. He's like, you know, it was just one of those, it's like, I know that feeling. I've been there, right? Where it's like, oh shit, I can't get out of this. Now I have to talk, right? So it was like very much that. And, you know, knowing exactly that was what the thing was, you know, okay, so my ex was, I think they were a year and 6 weeks apart age-wise. So my ex was born, and then, you know, a year and 6 weeks later, his brother was born. I think that was ish. Somewhere in there. But, you know, the brother, you know, he was the one that was born when their mom was very much knew she was leaving their dad, and, you know, all these toxic connections with, you know, she had with her husband at the time, and, you know, before she threw him out, and her sisters had to talk her out of aborting the second born because they said they thought she would really regret it. So they pushed her to keep him, and so he spent his whole life knowing this story, right? This is that the end. You know, I've talked about, you know, that the mother wound, and basically, you know, just the fact that she was pregnant with him and having these big feelings, this big hatred toward her husband at the time, and, you know, all the feelings with, you know, you're with this scumbag of a human and you already have one of his kids, but now you're also pregnant with another one of his kids. It's like all the stuff that gets passed on in utero, by no fault of either, but it's still stuff that gets passed on, right? So, you know, and then of course his brother always resenting him because, you know, he saw him as the reason that the kid's dad, or the reason that their dad left, right? I'm thinking my uncle's out playing with the corgi, and she saw it. And so I moved the curtain to block most of her line of sight, but now it kind of sucks on my lighting. Yeah, come this way. Maybe I'll shut that first. Ziva will be back in, so I'm not shutting it all the way. Anyway, maybe the brother was 6 weeks old when they left. I don't know. There was something about 6 weeks. Anyway, but then his brother spends their whole lives resenting him too, right? Leave it. I will throw you out of here if you're going to be a brat. So it was just like all these different layers of why he would try to go unnoticed, right? Leave it. Turn the lamp on. Block more of her line of sight because she's gonna act up. Ugh. You made my lighting suck. Okay, that's a little better. But yeah, so I made him talk to me, right? And then, just knowing that was, honestly, it's like part of it was my being there made it okay to lock in the next series of events, I guess. I don't know, it's just really weird thinking through things and being able to see how it's like, okay. Fuck's sake. We have shift to the chaotic part of the day. Anyway. But like seeing how just like my being in this space, it's like made it okay, everything's connected, right? So it's like the certain events that lead you to a certain space to lock in the next parts of the way the story plays out, right? So there's the possibility that things would have turned out differently. Like just the trajectory. That's what I'm thinking. It's like just my being there ended up locking these other things in because of the things that I exist to do, kind of a thing. Like collecting data and putting weird, complicated scenarios together and making sense of things to a level that most people probably don't think about, I guess. I don't know. Like detective shit. But not to the full or same full extreme, I guess. I don't know. Anyway. Right, so if it wasn't for my having been in that scenario or in that situation with the ex because of what I had, set out to learn, which how do people end up in these really toxic connections and then feel stuck and like they can't ever get out of them. I've talked about that on here a lot, right? So, but going back to, just being that being the thing, and then all the things that got me there, and then all the things that, since I'm in this space, and the only thing I really know about myself because of the military thing and all that stuff was I knew I liked to help people. It's like I lost all sight of everything about who I was or what I could do, but I knew I liked to help people. So for my ex's situation, there was a lot of drama, but I knew I liked to help people, so I could probably help him on that end. Right? So shouldn't have been there. But since I was, might as well utilize my skills to kind of basically to show me that they are there. That is something that I do, even though like I wasn't, I can say I've probably always known that I've been collecting data to some degree, but I didn't know that it was like to make sense of it to the full extreme that I am able to do. I don't know. Anyway, tower moments. So one of the tower moments for the kid's mom was the fact that she had this whole thing made up that she expected just because she was the mom, she was going to win this whole thing. It was all going to go to her. She was going to keep her son, and his dad wasn't going to be able to have anything to do with him, but he was going to still pay child support. Except everything she was rolling on was lies, right? And she couldn't keep the kid at the same, okay, she jerked him out of, one school after another, therapy, different psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever. It was, she would take them take him there until they started catching on to the fact that she was making up the stories and, kind of pulling his strings, if you will, and making him say the things he was saying. But as soon as, anybody would start to figure that out, she'd rip him out of that one, take him to a new one, and start all over, right? So it's like, that's not healthy, because the kid's not able to make any kind of lasting connections with anybody either, right? So that was the one where I put the whole spiel together. I completely deconstructed her entire, all of her bullshit on this protective order. And, I even found the attorney that would be able to handle, his case, his brother's case, put everything in front of the same judge, all of it together. It's like, okay, so this is what we need. We need somebody who will be able to, handle this, this, and this, and, get it seen in the same space, so she's not able to keep, just adding in the chaos by, trying to get somebody else to say something different, right? We're going to, completely tear it apart, but we got to have it in one space, right? So that's what I did, and I had, this, flash drive that I took to his attorney's office. It's like, there are a bunch of documents on here. It's like, there's an extensive timeline. It's like, I had everything on there. I wrote him out a thing as far as what it was, why it was there, and all that kind of stuff. And it ended up being stuff that we very much went back to that flash drive. And, there were days, I wanted to say there was 2 or 3 days of court. And I had just left. It was I put all this stuff together. And then that was when I left him in Alabama the second time, the trial run, if you will, because the first time was the apartment. It's I got gung-ho on this shit and I shouldn't be here, but then it was before the full extreme of her shit with the brother and all that stuff. Basically, the brother was the favorite person in the family for her son, so she had to destroy that connection so he wouldn't want anything to do with his dad's side of the family, right? So knowing his brother had done nothing like she was accusing him of, and like she was forcing her son to accuse him of, I wasn't going to sit for that. It's I am a firm believer in, letting the people who actually have had harm done to them have a voice, right? And, my ex wasn't the victim. Had he done the things he was also accused of? No. But he was still, every bit as, involved in, the issues that allowed the kid to be utilized in that way as a weapon, because that was what they were raising him to do, was to be a weapon against the other one, right? So she was on the stand the longest, but they started with me. Because I knew that case inside and out, and I knew where everything fit and could, or where it was on the flash drive, and what information I needed to access to put in front of the judge. It's I had all that stuff. So I think it is very safe to say that he could not have won that without me. However, also to emphasize that I did not do it for him. the thing I did, okay, the most of it was for his brother and for his parents too, who had been accused of some things as well. Less so them, more so the brother, but also the kid, because the kid was just going along with it because, you know, he was getting toys because he went along with what his mom said. You know, and he even told, you know, that even came out to one of the therapists that, you know, he was going to go get a toy after, you know, he talked to the therapist and told the therapist what had happened and all this stuff, right? And it's like all these, you know, basically all these scenarios in which the kid ends up thwarting off the bad behavior of, you know, 30-year-old men. It's like, yeah, nobody's gonna fall for that, but, you know, we still got to put the right pieces together so we can just like squash it all the way down and completely, you know, destroy the root of the thing, right? So yeah, like that day, I ended up, I was the first person to go on the stand for this custody case, and I was on the stand for 4 hours because I knew the case. And, you know, of course, my ex and his parents, I think, were the only two, or were the only three in there on his side, and then of course the kid's mom, and I don't know if she had any, I don't remember if she had anybody there, but because there was the possibility that the grandparents might need to be, you know, custodians of, I don't know, they might end up with him in their care for whatever reason they were in there. So they watched me kind of tear the whole thing apart. And I watched this chick taking notes about things about me, you know, and I knew just watching her that she was going to try to spin that when she got in front of the judge, right? When it was her turn to talk. And of course she did. And of course, you know, I had witnesses there to talk about that. Especially even that I don't remember. Oh yeah. I don't remember the exact details. I remember, however, she knew that I went to seminary, and she tried to spin that and make it so I had, you know, made the comparisons of Satan and Santa. It's like, bitch, I don't even believe in Satan, so fuck you. So, yeah. Well, I mean, I was kind of iffy on it at the time. And, you know, my seminary experience, of course, that, you know, seminary, this was after I graduated seminary, but like one of the biggest things from seminary was sitting in, I think it was a Job class, and yeah, it might not have been that one. It was the same teacher, but at one point she said that in the Hebrew scriptures, Satan wasn't even, like, it wasn't an actual figure. And, like, I was just like, you know, something about, like, with the wordage that translated to adversary. It's like, I remember being so puzzled by this thought. And I found some random synagogue in Indianapolis and just emailed some random rabbi and was like, so I'm in seminary and we're having this conversation and the teacher just said this information and I have to confirm this is true. And he said, yeah, that is true. We don't believe, like, we don't have the Satan figure that, you know, Christianity has or whatever. It's like, so what would be the point of adding in that drama? Yeah, so anyway, tower moments, right? So I got in on her story because, you know, she drugged me into it. She even put me in the protective order and a couple of things. It's like, bitch, you did not just turn this on me and say that I was somehow complicit in this supposed abuse taking place. Basically, I waited in the car while I allowed her, you know, her kid's dad and his brother to assault the child. And it's like, interesting. Yeah, but I tore that shit down. But then also, because this all goes back to this conversation that I'm having with the kid, the grown-up kid in this storyline where he shows up, right? No! Gidget, shut up. And, so where that came in with her dad, right? Or with his dad, right? So the tower moment for his dad. His dad was telling everybody the entire time we were together that I was only after him for his money. Never mind the fact that, it was my 401k that got depleted so we could make that move to Alabama. It was me that took on, like, student loans. I maxed out a couple semesters of student loans while in seminary to get his truck fixed so we could make this move to Alabama. And then he couldn't even help me make the last little bit of my car payment because, I have like $200 that I can get together for this payment, but I don't have the other. It was like $297, right? So I don't have the last $97 that I can scrape in, and he can't help me with it, even though I just paid for all this stuff, right? It was my retirement money that helped us move, my student loans that helped us move, right? And that's all. The student loans are something I still got to deal with those, right? So they're still accumulating interest because that's fabulous, right? And he didn't have to deal with any of that, right? Because when I left, I talked about how my biggest thing was he was trying to tempt me to go to court. He was going to make it easy. He didn't want to have another attorney somewhere, so he was going to represent himself. It's like, I've seen you in action, dickhead. I know that your only aim in life is to make people look and feel crazy. I'm not interested. Right, so I sent his mom this big, long email, told her all these reasons why I would never be back and why I knew it was done. And I said, look, I got most of the stuff that I wanted when I left. I said, if you can push him to signing the divorce paperwork within 4 business days, that's it. I don't want anything else. I just want to be done. I said, if you cannot do that, you've seen how I can piece things together and use evidence for court. So we can go if necessary, but I don't want to. I'm just ready for it to be done. And she pushed him. And so on the last day that he could do, or I think she probably got after him every single day until he went, and he went on the last day. And then the first message I get back, I got a text message from him, which was aggravating as fuck because I'd gotten a new phone number and told the attorney I didn't want him having it, but he let my ex have it anyway because it was on the paperwork when my ex went in to sign it. So my ex sends me this text message saying, I freed you. It's like, fuck you, dickhead. All I did was immediately blocked him. And then a few weeks later, I got this message saying, were things really so bad that we'll never speak again? And it was from a number I didn't recognize. And I said, who's this? And all I got was the letter Z. It's like, nope, blocked. Not doing that either. It's like, I was the one that changed my phone number to get rid of your ass. You changed your phone number to say that I was the one that was stalking you somehow. I know how this works. I've seen you in action. But then, like, the biggest thing was because I didn't push for anything else. So now the story that he's told all of his family, that doesn't have anything to stand up against, right? Because I just left and, I got fucked and all this thing. And I could have had money from his retirement or whatever. It's like he could have had to pay me some kind of something. My attorney was very sure he could get some, he could work me out a deal. And it's like, I got no vehicles. He had 3 vehicles. He wanted to give me the one that didn't work because the transmission had blown because he didn't want to get it fixed rather than, get a new car. So he just got a new car. $550 a month car payment when we are half the time having issues buying groceries. Yeah, no thanks. The only one I was interested in was the truck, and he was a big dick about that one. So it's just like, fuck it, I'm not interested in dealing with your bullshit anymore. I'm ready to be done with you. So, right? So the fact that I went against the story that he was trying to lay out there, you know, his family's got to have noticed that the stuff he was saying about me did not pan out exactly like he kept saying. But anyway, all that happened because of the stuff I was thinking about this morning, where, you know, the kid ends up checking in with me later in life. And it's like, I don't know, 18 to 21-ish is usually when I'm kind of seeing this scenario. It's like, will it happen? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't really matter. But like, even that, like, just thinking through that stuff this morning kind of made me put that tower moment piece into perspective, because it's like I've been getting a lot of those messages that I kind of know cause a bit of tower moments for people. No, take a break. Take a break. And she's driving me nuts with this now, because it's like she figures everything out. She figured out when we were doing the videos in the car, then, you know, she started being a pain about them that way, and then she started doing this whining crap after a while. You know, she'd wait for the keywords that she knew I was wrapping it up, and then, you know, it was kind of funny, and sometimes it still is, but whining at me all the way through is not really helpful. Give them an inch, they take a mile. Even with the dogs, man. But yeah, anyway. I'm sure there was something I didn't finish in there. I'll probably watch this one before I post it tonight. I think there's like 3 that I haven't watched before I post it now, and 2 of them were this week. But yeah. Oh, I don't know if I finished that point. It's not really a point. It's like my one cousin, the baby shower's tomorrow, and the other preemie baby is still, I think the due date's like November. It's like, why are we still pushing to have the baby shower this early? Well, we'll give the baby a little more time. Maybe the baby could be there eventually, right? But nah. Anyway, baby shower tomorrow, which is also a memorial for the one that didn't make it. So yeah. Kind of feel that one. Anyway, I have been making progress in my room this week. I have way less crap on the floor. I've gotten rid of a bunch more clothes and whatnot. And a couple things sold out of the storage unit. That was big. And the one yesterday, like, I didn't even see that one coming. That was yesterday. I got up and, you know, I went out to lunch with my aunt, and then she had a phone call she had to be back for, and, you know, randomly in that time frame, this guy messages me asking me about a couple of the tables that I have posted on this OfferUp page, and he wanted to come check them out that evening. Like, all right. So then my aunt and I, after her phone call, went to walk the dogs, which, that's a dangerous word, and this thing is right here. Oops. It's feet. But anyway, like, we had just decided to go get ice cream after we were done walking the dogs. And then I got a message from this guy saying that they were on their way and they'd be there in about 20 minutes. Like, all right. It's like, hopefully the ice cream place can get us through that quickly, you know, because it's close, but you know, it's on the storage unit's on the way home, so it's like, we're going to trust that it can. You know, we went ahead and got the ice cream and ate at the ice cream place, because of course we have 4 pup cups, so that's a whole ordeal. And then we're able to make it to the storage unit to meet this guy, and he bought one of my tables. And it's like, that's $20 I didn't see coming. But that'll pay my care credit card payment that's due on the 15th that I forgot all about, but all at once was kind of concerned about recently, because it's like, ooh, I don't know of an income. Hush. Come here. Come here. I don't know of an income. No. Stop. Between now and then, but then, bam, here's $20. So, yay, income. Not much. It already has a home, but, you know, as soon as I get it to the bank, but I have till the 15th, but I will handle it before then. Just hopefully something else will sell between now and then, so I can also do that, but whatever. But yeah, that's my agenda, aside from getting this posted, is to finish, or do some more cleaning. It's one of those things, it's like an ongoing task. I will say this basket, okay, that basket right there was way better than I thought it was going to be, because I forgot it had all those rocks in it. I've been collecting rocks just to have in my space. I have nature in my space. I gotta clean my dresser off, so that's today's task. And my shelves, and reorganize my plants and whatnot. But I was collecting all these rocks for a while, and I think one of these other boxes is mostly rocks. I've just pulled in, but it's like, you know what? I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but I am confident that it has helped immensely on my feeling more grounded in my space. So, I mean, now I'm thinking I'll probably keep the basket. I was thinking about, you know, yeah, post it for $2 or something, but I don't know. But anyway, it got all these rocks in it. There's way less papers that I had to throw away than I thought I did. And there were some like paint clothes that I went ahead and threw away, because like I still got a ton of paint stuff, and I don't paint near as much as I used to. Like as far as like actual, you know, room painting stuff, or hair dye even, because I use the same stuff. And I got workout clothes in one of my drawers now. Did have to reconfigure a drawer that had some leggings in it, and I was all confused. It's like, I know I have way more leggings than I'm finding in here. And it's like, wait a second, what's in those drawers? Oh, leggings. Okay, so now I have 3 drawers full of leggings, whereas not the other one I had was well, no, scratch that. I have 4 drawers full of leggings, but one of them is like capri leggings. So, oops. Anyway, I'll be wearing more of those next few weeks anyway, because it's kind of getting chillier. And yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up. And now she's doing it again. Come here. Come here. Hey, get here. Okay, scratch that. They're just going to stare at the ball in my hand very impatiently. As always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.